On his way back from school, the boy walked slowly, kicking small stones on the road with his shoes. The afternoon sun was soft, and the street was not too crowded. He liked taking this way home because it was peaceful. But that day, something unusual caught his attention. Near the bus stop, he noticed a small girl standing alone. She wasn't moving much, just looking around nervously, her eyes scanning every face that passed by. Her hands were tightly holding onto the straps of her little bag, and it was easy to see that she was scared. The boy stopped for a moment, unsure if he should keep walking or go near her. She looked younger than him, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and she didn't seem to know where she was. He could see the worry on her face, and it reminded him of how he once felt when he lost sight of his mother in a crowded market. That memory gave him the courage to step forward. Slowly he walked closer and spoke in a gentle voice, asking if she was all right. The girl looked up at him with wide eyes and shook her head. She whispered that she couldn't find her way home and didn't know what to do. Her words made him pause. He was just an ordinary boy going home from school, but something inside him said he couldn't leave her there. He asked her a few more questions, trying to figure out where she lived or who she was waiting for. She didn't know the exact address, only that her house was near a park with a big tree. The boy thought for a moment. He didn't know her family, and he wasn't sure which park she meant, but he could not ignore her. He looked at her again and noticed how she kept shifting her feet, as if she might cry at any moment. He felt a strong sense of responsibility, even though he was young himself. He told her not to worry, that he would help her get home safely. His voice was calm, and for the first time, the girl seemed to relax just a little. She nodded slowly and stood beside him. They began to walk together. The boy made sure to keep his pace slow so she could follow easily. He asked her if she remembered any shop, street, or building near her home. She thought hard, but only repeated that there was a park with a big tree. The boy smiled faintly, trying not to show his worry. He didn't want her to feel more scared. As they moved along the road, people glanced at them curiously. It wasn't common to see a schoolboy guiding a smaller girl with such care. At one crossing, the boy reached out his hand to stop her from stepping too quickly. Cars moved fast, and he made sure they crossed only when it was safe. The girl looked up at him with trust in her eyes, and he felt even more determined to help her. To keep her calm, he started talking about simple things. He asked her what her favorite color was. She answered softly, saying she liked blue because it reminded her of the sky. He smiled at that and told her he liked green, the color of trees. For a moment, the girl giggled, and her face brightened. That small sound gave the boy hope. He realized that even though he didn't know where her home was yet, at least she was no longer feeling completely alone. They passed by a small shop, and the boy noticed the girl staring at a packet of biscuits displayed outside. He knew she was hungry, so he reached into his pocket and pulled out the little money he had saved from his school allowance. Without hesitation, he bought the biscuits and handed them to her. She accepted them shyly, whispering thank you before taking a bite. That simple act of kindness seemed to make her more comfortable around him. While she ate, the boy looked around the area, trying to think which direction might lead to a park. There were several streets ahead, some busy and some quiet. He decided to keep walking and ask people along the way if they knew of a park with a big tree. The girl followed close behind, her small steps quickening to match his. Every time she felt uncertain, she would hold onto the edge of his sleeve for comfort. The boy felt a strange mix of pride and responsibility. He wasn't sure how long it would take, but he was determined to see this through. Deep inside, he knew that leaving her alone was not an option. As the two of them continued their slow journey, the boy realized that sometimes, doing the right thing didn't need planning or reward. It only needed courage and a kind heart. The street stretched ahead, and though the boy did not know exactly where their steps would lead, he promised himself that he would not stop until the little girl was safe at home. The trust in her eyes was now stronger than her fear, and that was enough to keep him going, one step at a time. Asterisk, the boy and the little girl walked side by side, the street stretching long in front of them. The girl kept glancing up at him, her tiny hands clutching the biscuit packet he had given her. She still looked unsure, but not as frightened as before. The boy noticed this and felt glad that she trusted him. He wanted to keep her calm, so he began asking small questions, hoping that her answers might lead them closer to her home. He asked her if she remembered what her house looked like. She thought for a while before saying it had a white gate and some flowers outside. That was not much, but it was enough for him to imagine the kind of place they should search for. He nodded seriously, as if he already had a plan. The girl seemed comforted by his confidence, even though in truth, he wasn't sure which way to go. They reached a crossroad. The boy looked around, trying to decide which direction might lead to a park. He spotted a shopkeeper standing outside his store and went over to ask. The man shook his head, saying there were many parks nearby, each with trees. That made the boy's task harder, but he didn't show his worry to the girl. Instead, he told her they would keep walking, and together they would find the right place. She smiled faintly, her trust in him growing stronger with every step. As they walked, the boy tried to make the journey less frightening for her. He told her about his own walk from school, about how he liked spotting funny-shaped clouds in the sky, and how sometimes he imagined stories about the people he saw on the road. The girl listened carefully, and then she started sharing her own little stories. She talked about how she liked to draw flowers on paper, how her favorite doll had a broken arm, but she still loved it, and how her mother always sang her a song before bedtime. The boy nodded at everything, and it felt to her like she was walking with an older brother. At one point, a group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. The girl became nervous and moved closer to the boy, almost hiding behind him. The boy noticed her fear and walked a little faster, keeping himself between her and the group until they had gone. He didn't say anything, but his action alone was enough to reassure her that he would protect her no matter what. The sun was slowly setting, and the light turned golden on the road. The boy grew a little anxious about time. He knew her family must be worried, but he couldn't let her see his concern. Instead, he suggested they stop for a short rest near a bench under a tree. The girl sat down, swinging her small legs, and looked around with curious eyes. The boy thought hard, trying to remember any nearby parks with large trees. He wasn't sure, but he decided they would start with the biggest one in the area. When they got up again, the girl looked more relaxed. She even hummed a small tune as they walked, which made the boy smile. People they passed gave them kind looks, impressed by how carefully the boy held the girl's hand while crossing streets, or how he bent down to her level when talking, so she wouldn't feel small or ignored. At one corner, the boy spotted an old woman carrying shopping bags. He politely asked her if she knew of a park with a very big tree where children often played. The woman thought for a moment and then pointed down another road, saying there was such a place not too far away. The boy thanked her and felt a spark of hope. The girl's eyes brightened when she heard the woman's words. She squeezed the boy's hand, excited that they might finally be close. They began walking faster, the girl almost skipping beside him now. The boy's heart lifted when he saw her smile, but he also knew they still had to be careful. As they continued, the streets became quieter, and the sound of birds filled the air. The girl pointed suddenly at something in the distance, a swing set in the park ahead. She said it looked familiar. The boy encouraged her to keep looking around, reminding her to notice every detail. Her little face lit up with recognition as she spotted the tall tree the woman had mentioned. She was certain now they were closer to her home. The boy felt relief washing over him, but he stayed calm and steady so she wouldn't sense his excitement too early. With every step toward the park, the girl grew more confident. The boy walked beside her, proud of how far they had come. He knew the journey wasn't finished yet, but in that moment, He believed they were finally moving in the right direction. The boy and the girl stepped into the park, and the air around them felt different. The tall tree she had spoken of stood proudly in the middle, its branches stretching wide as if trying to touch the sky. Children played nearby on swings and slides, while parents watched from benches. For a moment, the girl's face lit up with joy, her tiny finger pointing toward the tree. She whispered that she had seen it many times before. The boy felt hopeful, but he also knew the search was not over. A park could be familiar, but finding her exact home would still take patience. They walked slowly through the park, the boy guiding her carefully. She kept looking around, trying to recognize something more than just the big tree. She said her home was close, but when they reached the edge of the park, every street seemed the same. Houses lined up neatly, each with gates, gardens, and flowers, but none looked special enough for her to be certain. The boy felt the challenge grow heavier. He could not let her lose hope, so he kept encouraging her. He asked her to think about details. Did her house have red flowers or yellow ones? Did it have a tall wall or a small fence? She thought hard, saying she remembered flowers near the gate, maybe pink roses, and a small path leading to the front door. That clue gave the boy a fresh sense of direction. They began walking from one street to another, peering at houses carefully. With every turn, the girl grew excited, only to shake her head moments later when she realized it wasn't the right one. The boy noticed her shoulders drooping with disappointment each time, and he would gently tell her not to worry, that they would find it. His calm voice was like a promise she could trust. At one point, they reached a street where a dog barked loudly from behind a gate. The girl froze, clinging tightly to the boy's arm. She looked terrified, her eyes filling with tears. The boy immediately stepped in front of her, standing like a shield until the dog moved away. He spoke softly, telling her the dog couldn't harm her from behind the gate. Slowly, her grip loosened, and she nodded, wiping her face. The boy realized how much she depended on him, and he felt stronger for her sake. They continued their search, but wrong turns made the journey tiring. The boy's legs ached from walking, and the girl's little feet stumbled now and then, but neither wanted to stop. The boy kept scanning the area for signs that could match her memories. A small park bench, a narrow lane, a wall with painted designs. He pointed these out, hoping they would trigger something in her mind. At last, the girl's eyes widened as she saw a familiar corner shop. She tugged at the boy's sleeve, whispering that she had been there before with her mother. She remembered buying candy from that very shop. The boy felt a surge of excitement. He knew they were finally close. He encouraged her to look around carefully. Her gaze swept the houses nearby, her little heart racing with hope. But even with this new clue, the search wasn't simple. Some houses looked similar, and the girl hesitated, unable to be sure. She grew frustrated, her voice trembling as she said she couldn't remember clearly. The boy crouched down to her level, meeting her eyes, and told her it was okay. He reminded her that being scared could make memories blurry, but together they would figure it out. She nodded slowly, comforted by his patience. As they moved along the street, a few neighbors noticed the pair. Some gave curious looks, while others offered kind smiles. One old man even stopped to ask if they needed help. The boy explained briefly, and the man pointed further down, saying there were houses with gardens full of roses in that direction. The boy thanked him, feeling a new wave of determination. The girl's small hand slipped back into his, and they walked again, their steps steady despite the long search. She whispered that she could almost picture the front gate, as if it were waiting just around the corner. The boy encouraged her to keep that image in her mind. The evening air grew cooler, and the streetlights slowly flickered on. Shadows stretched across the road, making the journey feel more serious. Yet the boy's courage did not fade. He felt closer than ever to completing the task he had taken upon himself. Every wrong turn, every moment of fear, every step of patience had brought them to this point. The girl's heart was filled with a mix of hope and fear, while the boy's was steady with determination. Both knew they were about to discover something important, even if they couldn't yet see what awaited them at the end of the road. Asterisk. The boy and the little girl walked further down the street, guided by the old man's directions. The girl's steps grew quicker, almost like she could sense something ahead. Her eyes darted from one house to another, scanning every gate and garden. Then suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. She pointed at a neat white gate with roses blooming on both sides. Her voice trembled with excitement as she whispered that this looked like her home. The boy followed her gaze. The house stood tall, with a small path leading from the gate to the front door. Pink roses grew along the fence, just as she had described earlier. His heart leapt, but he kept calm for her sake. He asked gently if she was sure. The girl nodded firmly, her little face lighting up with relief. Together, they walked closer to the gate. Before they could even call out, the front door burst open. A woman ran out, her face pale with worry and her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw the girl, she screamed her name and rushed forward. The girl broke into a run, dropping the empty biscuit packet as she flew into the woman's arms. The mother hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks, rocking her back and forth as if afraid to let go. The boy stood a few steps back, quietly watching the reunion. His chest filled with warmth, though his legs suddenly felt weak from the long search. He had done it. He had brought her home. The neighbors, hearing the commotion, stepped out of their houses. They looked on with surprise, whispering about how the boy had helped bring the lost child back. Some smiled, some shook their heads in amazement, and others clapped lightly as if applauding his courage. The mother finally looked up, noticing the boy standing shyly near the gate. Her eyes widened with gratitude. She hurried over, still holding her daughter's hand tightly, and thanked him again and again. Her voice trembled with emotion as she said she didn't know what she would have done if he hadn't stepped in to help. The boy shifted his weight nervously, not used to so much attention, but he managed to smile and say he was only glad she was safe. The little girl, still holding onto her mother, turned back to glance at him. Her eyes were shining, not with fear anymore, but with gratitude. She waved her small hand and gave him the kind of smile he would never forget. For the first time since he had met her at the bus stop, she looked completely at peace. More neighbors gathered now, curious about what had happened. Some patted the boy on the shoulder, telling him he had done a brave and kind thing. A few even said most people would have walked past without helping, but he had chosen differently. The boy listened quietly, not saying much, but inside he felt a sense of pride he had never experienced before. The mother asked if his parents knew where he was. When he nodded, she insisted on walking him part of the way back, to thank him properly. The boy hesitated, not wanting to trouble her further, but she was determined. Holding her daughter close with one arm and resting her other hand on the boy's shoulder, she guided them back toward the gate. The crowd slowly dispersed, but whispers of admiration still floated in the air. The boy realized he had become the center of a story people would tell for days. Yet to him, it didn't feel like something heroic. It felt like something anyone should do. Before leaving, the mother bent down to the boy's level. Her face was still wet with tears, but her eyes were steady now. She told him that he hadn't just helped her daughter find her way home. He had given a mother her peace back, and for that, she would never forget him. The boy's throat tightened at her words. He didn't know how to reply, so he simply nodded as he stepped back toward the road. The little girl tugged her mother's hand and called out to him once more. Her soft voice echoed in the evening air, thanking him again. The boy gave her a small wave, and then turned to continue his walk. His heart felt light, though his mind was still trying to process the weight of what had just happened. The task he had taken upon himself was complete. The girl was safe, her family reunited, and the neighborhood buzzing with the story of a boy's kindness. But deep inside, He sensed there was more to this than he realized. Something about the way the mother had looked at him. Something about the way the neighbors whispered. It felt like this was not just an ordinary reunion. And soon, he would discover the truth that would leave him frozen in place. The boy walked slowly, still feeling the warmth of the little girl's smile and her mother's embrace. He thought the story had ended there, but just as he was about to turn toward the road leading back home, the mother called him back. Her voice carried a strange mix of relief and urgency. He stopped in his tracks, glancing over his shoulder. She stood at the gate with her daughter still holding onto her, and her eyes were fixed on him with a seriousness that made his heart beat faster. She stepped forward, lowering her voice as she spoke. She told him there was something he needed to know. At first, the boy didn't understand. To him, she was just a little girl who had gotten lost and a mother who had been worried sick. But as the woman explained, the truth came like a wave that left him frozen. The girl was not just any child. Her family was well known in the community, not for wealth alone, but for the kind of influence that reached far beyond their neighborhood. Her father was a respected figure, someone whose decisions shaped the lives of many. The little girl, though too young to understand the world around her, carried a name that people recognized instantly. The boy's eyes widened as the mother gently revealed this. For a moment, he stood silent, trying to absorb what it meant. He had treated her like any other child, not once thinking of who she might be or what her family status could mean. His legs felt weak as the realization sank in. He hadn't just helped the lost girl. He had unknowingly protected someone whose disappearance could have caused chaos. Even headlines. The mother's voice shook as she told him how grateful she was. She explained that when her daughter went missing, the entire household had gone into a panic. Calls had already been made, and people had been preparing to search every street. But before they could spread further fear, this ordinary schoolboy had taken it upon himself to do what many adults might not have done. He stepped forward. Boy swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had never thought of himself as someone important. He was just a child who had a heart big enough to help. Yet here he stood, realizing the weight of his actions. The girl looked up at him, still smiling with innocence, not understanding the depth of what he had done. The mother reached into her bag, pulling out a small envelope. She said it was only a token, a way to thank him for his kindness. But the boy quickly shook his head. His voice was steady as he told her he didn't do it for reward. He only did what was right, and knowing the girl was safe was enough for him. The woman's eyes filled with tears again at his words. She put the envelope away, realizing this boy's heart was pure. Neighbors who had stayed nearby listened quietly, some shaking their heads in admiration. The story of his simple courage was already spreading, and it was clear this act of kindness would not be forgotten. Some whispered that even grown men would have hesitated, worried about trouble, but this boy had chosen to act. As he finally turned to leave, the mother called after him once more. Her words carried a weight that would stay with him forever. She told him that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness become the ones that change lives the most. She said he may not realize it now, but what he did would be remembered not just by her family, but by everyone who heard the story. The boy walked home with a quiet mind, the evening breeze brushing his face. He thought of the girl's smile, the trust in her eyes, and the moment when she clung to him for safety. He thought of the mother's tears and the neighbor's whispers. His heart felt heavier than before, but not in a sad way. It was the kind of weight that came from knowing he had done something truly meaningful. He didn't need rewards. He didn't need praise. All he carried with him was the memory of a lost little girl who had found her way home because he chose not to walk away. That was enough. And though he was too young to put it into words, he knew that this day would remain with him for the rest of his life, a reminder that one act of kindness, no matter how small it seems, can leave a mark deeper than anyone could imagine.